Welcome back, everyone. Just for your information, this is day 3 of my Israel trip. If you haven't seen day 1 or 2 yet, go check those out first, but let's get started. We started out at the Mount of Beatitudes. This is located on the north of the Sea of Galilee. It's also the most likely location for where Jesus gave the Sermon on the Mount, which starts with the Beatitudes. There's a church there called the Church of the Beatitudes. Built in 1938, it has an octagonal shape, each side representing one of the 8 blessings of the Beatitudes. See those stained glass windows up top? That's where the Beatitudes are written. We took some group photos here. There's Doyle, Jean, and Shane. Me and Jean again. I know what you're thinking. How come everything looks kind of drab and brown? It doesn't usually look like this. A few months before our trip, there had been a fire at this location, so some of the landscape and trees got burned. Not to mention, since it was late fall and heading into winter, a lot of the green grass had started to turn brown. But I've seen pictures of a lot of these sites when the grass is green, and it's beautiful. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. We learned how the Bible was passed down so accurately. Jesus, or whoever was speaking, would say a line of their sermon or speech, and they would pause. The people in front would turn to the people behind them and repeat it, and so on and so forth, so that people hundreds of feet away that couldn't hear the speaker would then be told what they were saying. So people would end up hearing something like the Beatitudes about 10 to 15 times as people around them repeat it. And you couldn't help but begin to remember what you were hearing after hearing it that many times. From there we moved on to Capernaum. This is the town where Jesus lived after he was cast out of Nazareth. When Jesus heard that John had been put in prison, he withdrew to Galilee. Leaving Nazareth, he went and lived in Capernaum, which was by the lake in the area of Zebulun and Naphtali, to fulfill what was said through the prophet of Isaiah. Land of Zebulun and land of Naphtali, the way of the sea beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. It's amazing that you can see the original foundations of these buildings, and see the layout of the original Capernaum. Here we see a millstone for an olive press. From the way Jesus used example and parables, you can imagine him pointing to this millstone and then pointing at the Sea of Galilee not far from them when he spoke about it being better for someone to have a millstone hung around their neck and thrown in the sea than to cause a child to stumble. So Jesus lived in Peter's house when he lived in Capernaum. This house is also where Jesus healed Peter's mother-in-law. As soon as they left the synagogue, they went with James and John to the home of Simon and Andrew. Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they immediately told Jesus about her. So he went to her, took her hand, and helped her up. The fever left her, and she began to wait on them. The whole town gathered at the door, and Jesus healed many who had various diseases. The reason they believed this was Peter's house was that they found some fishermen's tools inside. There were also 2 churches throughout the centuries built around the house. Now, why would people build churches around a fisherman's house in Capernaum? It must have been a very important person. For this reason, they believe it was Peter. I mean, look at that. That's where Jesus lived. You see the 2 walls built around it? The one closest to the house was a Byzantine church, and the one on the outside was a Crusader church. You see how the stones of the town are black? That's because these are basalt rocks, which means they're volcanic. However, there's never been any volcanic activity in the area. That means these rocks got here as a result of either the Great Flood or creation. All the stones around the Sea of Galilee are these black basalt rocks. Next to the town is the synagogue. Jesus performed several miracles here. They went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, Jesus went into the synagogue and began to teach. The people were amazed at his teaching because he taught them as one who had authority, not as the teachers of the law. Just then a man in their synagogue who was possessed by an impure spirit cried out, "What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." "Be quiet," said Jesus sternly. "Come out of him." The impure spirit shook the man violently, and came out of him with a shriek. Now the synagogue you see here is not the original one from Jesus' time. However, it is built directly on the foundations of Jesus' synagogue, so it is the same size as the original synagogue. You can see the black basalt foundation underneath the white 4th century stones. Oh, look, another stray cat. Now, this is a Roman milestone bearing an inscription from the period of the Emperor Hadrian, early 2nd century BC. It attests to the important road across the village, the Via Maris, which linked Galilee with Damascus. Here are some of the carvings from that area. This column contains an inscription that mentions several apostolic names that lasted through the centuries. Then we stopped for a teaching moment. We then moved back west along the Sea of Galilee to the town of Tabgha. This is the observed site of the feeding of the 5,000. The claim is that this is where it actually happened, because there was a Byzantine church with a mosaic of a loaf of bread and 2 fish in it. Well, the Bible states it happened when Jesus went to the area of Bethsaida. This is just where this Byzantine church chose to observe the miracle. This is the Church of Multiplication, a 1936 reconstruction of a Byzantine church that was built in the 5th century AD, which in turn was built on the foundations of an earlier and much smaller 4th century chapel. This is a baptistry. Kind of looks like a hot tub, doesn't it? There was a beautiful courtyard with a tree and pond in it. And here is the inside of the Church of Multiplication. And here's the bread and fish mosaic. We then headed along the west of the Sea of Galilee to head to lunch. On the way, we passed by the cliffs of Arbel. Mostly it's just a sightseeing location, but it is mentioned in the Bible. Because you have depended on your own strength and on your many warriors, the roar of battle will rise against your people, so that all your fortresses will be devastated, as Shalman devastated Beth Arbel on the day of battle. We had lunch in the Migdal region at the Tamar restaurant, where they served something called St. Peter's fish. Ah, Doyle and Jean having fun, I see. Susan became the hero of the day when a tourist from, I believe they said Asia, got trapped in a bathroom stall. She climbed the stall next door to get the door unlocked for her. We then headed back north along the west side of the Galilee to head to our boat ride. There were so many banana fields, I was surprised. These were called peace trees, symbolizing the peace wanted between Israel and Palestine. Can you believe this was the location of several of Jesus' miracles? One day, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side of the lake." So they got into a boat and set out. As they sailed, he fell asleep. A squall came down on the lake so that the boat was being swamped, and they were in great danger. The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Master, Master, we're going to drown." He got up and rebuked the wind and the raging waters. The storm subsided and all was calm. "Where is your faith?" he asked his disciples. In fear and amazement, they asked one another, "Who is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him." The Sea of Galilee is Israel's largest freshwater lake, measuring 14 miles long and 7.5 miles wide at its broadest point. It is approximately 33 miles in circumference. It is roughly 650 feet below sea level, which makes it the lowest freshwater lake in the world. It is the major source of water for the entire country of Israel. It's fed by underground springs, but its main source is the Jordan River, which flows from the melting snows of Mount Hermon in the north. It was a bit of a walk through the park and down the pier to get to the boat. I'd been hoping we would stop in the building really quick, since I had heard the boat ride would be between 1 and 2 hours, but no such luck, straight to the boat. So, lucky me, I get to use the boat's bathroom. Jean, did you take this picture while I was using the bathroom behind that curtain? It's okay, I forgive you. Each group they take on the boat gets their country's national anthem played while they hoist the country's flag. Another miracle that happened on these waters was the walking on the water. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." It was so powerful being on these waters. I wore the perfect shirt for today. Dad had fun too. The company we took the boat ride with was Sea of Galilee Worship Boats. The man who owns the boats is Daniel, and he writes his own music. Check out one of his songs.
Be praised. Let the name of our Father in heaven be exalted. May the name of the great I am be lifted up. We're all in his hands, in his hands. Holy, 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 Lord of power and might. Oh, we praise you. To you the power and the glory. Now all the world will shout. Hoshiana Mameromi.
We had worship time after they stopped the boat in the middle of the lake. We then had some sharing time where we were welcome to come share any thoughts we were having. I I shared the thought of my testimony, which involved a dream God sent me that kind of woke me up to my reality and made me realize I needed to make it right with Him. I said it was like Peter, except Jesus didn't just reach down through the water to pull me up, He dove down to the sea's depths to pull me out. Back in 2013, I believe, the Sea of Galilee was the lowest it had been in decades, and they found a 1st century wooden boat. Here's an example of how they covered it in plaster to excavate it safely. Here's what archaeologists have recreated based on the construction visible on the boat. Next, we headed north some more to head back to Tabgha. We had tried to come here when we were at the Church of Multiplication earlier, but it was too busy, so we just shifted our schedule around. Our famous catchphrase of the trip was, "What kind of schedule do we have? Flexible!" Tabgha was the likely area where Jesus appeared to the disciples after His resurrection, and He cooked them fish by the Sea of Galilee. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to His disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them, and they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples didn't realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It is the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire burning coals there with fish on it, and some bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you have just caught." So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153, but even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." None of the disciples dared ask Him, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread, and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This is what the Church of the Primacy of St. Peter is. Built in 1934 in basalt over a massive rock called the Mensa Christi, it is the traditional site where Jesus appeared to His disciples after His resurrection and prepared breakfast for them. It's possible, but there's really no way of knowing if this was the exact rock. It was one of the first churches where the women had to wear clothes that covered their knees and shoulders. We had communion at this site. Next to this church was the Sea of Galilee. We took the opportunity to go into the water.
Natural light, then I'm going to go with picture, and then I'm going to go close up, close up, okay? Close up, and then I think I'll go far away, like, see the sea, right? And then I think I'll come up closer and just get your face and the here in the back. I don't know. Anything else?
No, you're
Okay.
a lot better than me. Okay. Am I in there?
This side of the Galilee, the east side, was considered Gentile territory during biblical times. Jews never ventured over there. There's Jean, Carlotta, and Betty. There were these little fish there, the kind that nibble on dead skin, you know. It tickled. There's Lori and Jackie. Here's Smitty. Jean said I needed a picture of Dad here. I looked around for a good spot and spotted the sign saying not to climb on the rocks. My dad totally would have climbed anyway. It was too perfect. We headed back to the hotel for the night. And then I guess because rooms emptied, they moved me to a single room so I wasn't taking up a double bedroom. Here's my new room. It was even smaller than the single bedroom I'd had on my trip to England. Don't worry, that YouTube video is still coming. And here's the better view from my new 4th floor room. Before, I was on the 1st floor. After dinner, me and a couple others walked down the road to the pharmacy to pick up a couple things. Here is Nazareth at night. And here's the Church of Annunciation. Listen to those beautiful bells. And that's the end of day 3. Go check out day 4. See you soon.